The dark matter conflict. The discovery that should never have happened. The Andromeda Expanse was a place of mystery, a vast and silent void stretching far beyond the edges of human control. It was here, on a lonely research station called Outpost Helios, that the greatest discovery in human history was made, a discovery that should never have happened. Dr. Ilias Rourke stood in front of the massive containment chamber, his eyes locked on the swirling black mass inside. It was unlike anything known to science, a sphere of absolute darkness, a void that seemed to pull light itself into its depths. Pure dark matter. For centuries, humanity had speculated about dark matter, theorized about its nature. But now, here it was, contained, studied, ready to be harnessed. The research team had spent years trying to manipulate it, and today was the day they would finally control it. Initiate the stabilization field, Rourke commanded. The room buzzed with energy as the magnetic stabilizers powered up. Blue lights flickered on the control panels, and a deep hum vibrated through the station. The sphere of darkness trembled, then stabilized. The experiment was working. Dr. Helena Voss, the lead physicist, leaned over her console, her fingers moving quickly across the controls. Energy levels are steady. We're holding it. Rourke exhaled. Good, this is it. We're making history. But then, something changed. The air around them grew colder. The lights flickered. A deep, unnatural sound echoed through the chamber. A whisper, low and indecipherable. The dark matter sphere pulsed. What was that? Helena asked, her voice uneasy. Before anyone could answer, the alarm screamed to life. Proximity warning. Anomaly detected. The dark matter containment field collapsed. A shockwave of energy blasted through the room, throwing scientists to the ground. The sphere expanded for a brief second, then imploded with a deafening roar. A wave of darkness rippled outward, passing through the walls of the station like a ghostly shadow. And then, silence. The research team staggered to their feet. The sphere was gone. The monitors flickered back on. Data scrolled across the screens in a rapid, unreadable mess. Rourke rubbed his head, trying to process what had happened. Status report, he barked. Helena checked her screen. Her face went pale. Sir, I don't know how to say this, but something's wrong. Very wrong. Rourke hurried to her side. The data on the monitor sent a chill through him. A star system, a fully inhabited system, had vanished. The communication station was in chaos. Reports flooded in from every outpost and colony in the sector. We've lost contact with the Vega Prime system. Entire planets have disappeared. No debris, no explosions, just gone. Reality itself is breaking. Rourke clenched his fists. This wasn't just a failed experiment. This was a catastrophe. Helena turned to him. Ilias, what if we didn't just observe dark matter? What if we woke something up? The words sent a chill through the room, and then, before anyone could respond, the main monitor cracked open with static. A sound filled the station. Low, deep, something ancient, and then a voice. You have touched the forbidden. Now you will be erased. A darkness spread across the monitor, shifting and twisting, forming something inhuman, a shadow with burning white eyes, a presence that should not exist. Helena gasped. My God, the Voidborn had awakened. The Shadow War begins. The first attack was silent. There was no warning, no distress calls, no survivors. Entire human colonies vanished overnight, as if they had never existed. What was left behind was worse than destruction. A void where cities once stood, a hollow absence where billions had lived. The Galactic Council panicked. Reports flooded in from distant systems. Colonies on the frontier were simply ceasing to be. Reconnaissance ships sent to investigate found nothing. No debris. No bodies. Just silence. Admiral Elias Voss stood on the bridge of the HSS Vanguard, humanity's most advanced warship. His jaw clenched as he watched the latest transmission from the colony of New Horizon, just hours before it disappeared. We have no enemy to fight, he muttered. No ships, no weapons, just nothing. Beside him, Dr. Celeste Kwan, one of the leading scientists of the Stellar Research Institute, analyzed the data. This isn't an invasion, she said. This is something else. something we don't understand. Fleet Command refused to wait. Humanity's greatest warships were deployed to counter the threat. They found their target, a mass of shifting darkness moving through the void. It had no shape, no form. It was like a living shadow, flickering in and out of existence. The First Fleet opened fire. Energy cannons and kinetic rounds blazed through the void. Missiles locked onto the mass, striking with enough force to shatter moons. Nothing happened. The weapons passed through the shadows like light through smoke. The fleet fired again. Again, nothing. The enemy was not solid. It was not even there in the way humanity understood existence. Then the shadow moved. One by one, the ships began to vanish, erased from reality. There was no explosion, no wreckage, just silence, as if they had never existed at all. Before the last ship disappeared, a lone distress call was transmitted back to Fleet Command. It was the voice of a dying officer, filled with terror. They are not attacking. They are consuming. The message cut off. And then, there was only darkness. The disaster sent shockwaves through the human empire. The greatest fleet ever assembled had simply ceased to be. No survivors, no wreckage, just emptiness. Dr. Kwan and a team of scientists worked desperately to analyze the phenomenon. She stood in the research facility on Titan, watching as the data came in. The readings made no sense. The Voidborn, if they could even be called that, were not physical entities. They did not occupy space in the way humans did. They don't just destroy, she said, staring at the results in horror. They erase potential. They consume what could be. Admiral Voss stormed into the lab. Speak plainly, Doctor. They feed on possibility itself, she explained. It's not just that they erase colonies and ships. They erase the very potential for them to have ever existed. The room fell silent. The implications were terrifying. If left unchecked, the Voidborn wouldn't just kill humanity. They would make it so humanity had never been. We can't fight them with weapons, Kwan continued. They exist outside our reality. Our attacks mean nothing to them. Then how do we stop them? Voss asked. Kwan hesitated. Then, for the first time, she offered something more than fear. We have to change. We have to become something greater than they fear. Voss frowned. And what would that be? We don't know yet, Kwan admitted. But if they consume possibility, then perhaps the only way to fight them is to become something beyond what they can erase. A new war had begun, one that could not be fought with weapons. Humanity had to evolve, or it would simply cease to be. The Shadow War had begun, the last light of Earth. The sky above Earth burned red with the light of destruction. Massive Voidborn warships hovered over the planet, their dark forms blocking out the stars. Cities lay in ruins, and the last human strongholds struggled to hold back the endless assault. Deep within a hidden military base, a team of scientists and generals stood in a dimly lit chamber, watching a single metal pod. The words Project Obsidian were etched on its surface. "We have no choice," General Lorne said, his voice heavy with exhaustion. "If we don't use the Voidborn's own power against them, Earth will fall within days." Dr. Evelyn Carter, the lead scientist, hesitated. "We still don't understand what this dark matter does to the human body. Every test subject has disappeared, their minds erased, their bodies dissolved." "Except one," Lorne said, turning to the far side of the room. A tall figure stood in the shadows. His once blue eyes were now an eerie shade of black, with faint glowing veins spreading across his pale skin. "Commander Elias Rourke. He survived," Lorne continued. "He might be our only hope." Rourke stepped forward, his voice colder than it had once been. "I didn't just survive," he said. "I changed." The battle in Earth's orbit was already lost. Human warships exploded one by one as the Voidborn overwhelmed them. Their weapons tore through hulls like paper. "We have to strike before they finish us," Rourke said, suiting up in his advanced exo-armor. Unlike standard human soldiers, his body no longer needed oxygen or food. The dark matter inside him pulsed, keeping him alive in ways no one understood. A small team of elite soldiers prepared to follow him on a final mission. Their target, the Voidborn mothership, a massive construct hidden in the blackness of space. It was the heart of the invasion, and they had only one chance to reach it. The ship Oblivion's Edge carried them through the wreckage of Earth's last fleet. As they approached the enemy's domain, a strange force surrounded them, an unnatural darkness that swallowed all light. "We're in their territory now," Rourke said, gripping his weapon tightly. His blackened fingers trembled slightly. The transformation had made him powerful, but it had also left him different. Something inside him whispered, calling him toward the abyss. "Stay focused." Evelyn's voice crackled through his earpiece. "We need to know what the Voidborn really are. We need to know why they're destroying everything." Then, the darkness moved. The Voidborn had found them, the gate to the nothingness realm. The alarms blared as Rourke and his team of Voidwalkers prepared for their mission. The Maw, a tear in space, a wound in reality, was the source of the Voidborn invasion. It was not just an entrance, it was a passage to another realm, a place where the laws of physics broke down. Rourke tightened the straps on his exosuit, checking his weapons one last time. His team stood beside him, each one a hardened warrior, trained to face the unknown. The Voidborn were relentless, but now humanity had a chance to strike at their heart. "This is it," Rourke said, his voice firm. "We go in, we find out what's on the other side, and we come back. No unnecessary risks." The ship shuddered as it neared the Maw. The black tear in space seemed to pulse, like a living thing. As they got closer, reality itself wavered. Their bodies flickered, phasing in and out of existence. It felt as if they were being erased, piece by piece. "Stay focused," shouted Lieutenant Graves, one of Rourke's most trusted soldiers. "Don't let it mess with your mind." The ship plunged into the Maw, and everything went black. When Rourke opened his eyes, he found himself floating in a place beyond comprehension. The stars were wrong, twisted, and shattered like broken glass. The darkness was alive, moving like a slow tide. The ruins of ancient civilizations drifted through space, lifeless husks of once great empires. This isn't just another dimension," whispered Sergeant Vega. "It's a graveyard." They moved forward, their thrusters guiding them through the eerie silence. The ruins were vast, stretching endlessly in every direction. Statues of forgotten rulers, shattered starships, crumbling cities. Everything pointed to one terrifying truth. Many had fought the Voidborn before, and all had lost. "Captain," Graves called out, "look ahead." At the center of the darkness, a massive structure loomed, a floating monolith of pure black stone. Pulsing within it was something unnatural, something wrong. It was a core of swirling nothingness, absorbing light, matter, and even time itself. "The Oblivion Core," Rourke breathed. "This is their source of power." The realization hit him like a hammer. Humanity was not the first to challenge the Voidborn, but at this rate, they might be the last. "Command, do you copy?" Rourke said into his comms. Static. No response. They were alone in this dead universe. Suddenly, the shadows around them began to move. The Voidborn were here, and they had been waiting. The unraveling of reality. Rourke stood in the middle of what was once Earth's greatest scientific facility. Now, it barely existed. The walls flickered, sometimes solid, sometimes fading into a mist of nothingness. Papers, screens, even people, blinking in and out of existence. The Voidborn were no longer just consuming galaxies, they were rewriting time itself. The world had already changed. Wars that once shaped history had vanished. Some of humanity's greatest leaders had never been born. Families were torn apart, not by death, but by non-existence. No one remembered them, because in this rewritten reality, they had never lived. But Rourke remembered. His mind burned with the weight of lost history. He was one of the few who had been inside the temporal shielding chamber when the Voidborn struck. That was the only reason he still knew the truth. The only reason he knew the world was falling apart. And the only reason he knew about Helena. In the heart of the collapsing world, a group of scientists fought against time itself. The last hope of humanity was an experimental device, the Paradox Engine. If activated, it would anchor reality, stopping the Voidborn from altering history any further. But it came with a terrible price. Someone had to be sacrificed. One person had to be erased completely, removed from existence, memory, and history, to stabilize the timeline. It had to be someone whose absence would create a paradox strong enough to reset reality. It had to be someone important. Rourke knew what had to be done. He was the logical choice. A decorated officer, a scientist, a man deeply connected to the fight against the Voidborn. He stepped forward. "I'll do it," he said. The room went silent. The scientists around him hesitated, but no one objected. They all knew someone had to go, and Rourke was ready. The machine powered up, its core pulsing with unstable energy. The air grew heavy, reality itself warping as time twisted around them. Then, a voice, soft but firm. "No, humanity needs you more than it needs me." Dr. Helena Rourke, his wife. She stepped forward before anyone could react, placing her hand on the activation panel. "Helena, no." Rourke lunged forward, but an invisible force held him back. The machine had already accepted her as the sacrifice. Her eyes met his. There was no fear, only determination. "You'll remember," she whispered. "That's enough." The machine roared to life. A blinding light filled the room. Rourke screamed, reaching out, but it was too late. Helena was gone, and then, so was every trace of her. The timeline stabilized. The Voidborn's corruption was erased. The wars returned to history. The great leaders were reborn. The lost families existed once more. The world was saved, but no one remembered Helena. Not a single record of her remained. No photographs, no scientific papers, no memories. Except for Rourke. He fell to his knees, gripping his head as his mind fought against a world where she had never been. A world where he was now a stranger to his own past. The others looked at him in confusion. "Rourke," a scientist asked, "are you okay?" He looked up, his eyes filled with rage. Something had been taken from him, something that no one else even knew existed, and someone had to pay. The Black Sun Offensive. The stars burned with unnatural fire as the battle began. The sky above Earth's last bastion was torn apart by war. Humanity had been on the defensive for too long, but now, with the paradox engine shielding them from erasure, it was time to fight back. The fleet of warships, each armed with the newly developed dark matter fusion lances, roared toward the enemy. These weapons, built using knowledge stolen from the Voidborn themselves, could pierce even the darkest depths of space. The operation had a name that echoed across every transmission: the Black Sun Offensive. Commander Rourke stood on the bridge of the Erebus, gripping the cold steel of the command console. His heartbeat was steady, his focus razor-sharp. In his grasp, the Oblivion core shard pulsed with power, whispering in the silence between his thoughts. He ignored it. Now was not the time for doubt. The first wave of human ships clashed with the Voidborn armada. Enormous, writhing monstrosities swam through space like living shadows, their tendrils stretching toward the invading fleet. The Erebus unleashed a storm of energy, its lances cutting through the darkness. Other ships followed, their weapons burning bright against the black abyss. "Target the Overlord," Rourke ordered. "We take it down, and the tide turns." On the other side of the battlefield, a shape moved. A Voidborn Overlord, a nightmare given form. It was massive, its body shifting like liquid darkness, absorbing the light around it. Its voice echoed through the minds of the human fleet, a whisper of despair. "You do not belong here. You do not understand what you face." Rourke clenched his jaw. "Fire all lances, now." Bolts of dark matter energy speared through space, striking the Overlord's body. It howled, a terrible otherworldly sound. The Voidborn forces recoiled, their leader wounded for the first time. Humanity had never done this before, never made them bleed. And then the Overlord turned its gaze upon Rourke. The Erebus shook violently as tendrils of darkness lashed out, wrapping around the ship. The Overlord was retaliating. Crew members screamed as the hull groaned under the crushing force. Rourke, shields failing, shouted his second-in-command, Captain Valen. Rourke didn't hesitate. He grabbed the Oblivion core shard and stepped toward the ship's viewport. He could feel the energy within him, the power he barely understood. It was time to use it. He pressed his palm against the glass, and the shard flared to life. "Get off my ship," he growled. A surge of violet energy burst from his body, racing across space like a wave. It struck the Overlord, forcing it to release the Erebus. The creature screamed, its form shifting, flickering. For the first time, a Voidborn felt pain. The battle raged on. Humanity fought with renewed fury, pushing forward, forcing the enemy back. The Black Sun offensive was working, but Rourke knew it wasn't over yet. The Overlord recovered quickly. It twisted, its form unraveling and reforming, its wounds closing as if time itself rewound. Rourke gritted his teeth. They could wound it, but could they kill it? Focus fire on the core, he ordered. Every ship, aim for the center. The fleet obeyed. A storm of energy lances cut through the void, converging on the Overlord's shifting form. It shrieked again, this time weaker. It was struggling. It was afraid. Rourke felt a sudden pull in his mind, something deeper than before. Not the whispers of Helena, his lost love, but something else, something older. You are not ready. The words echoed inside his skull, and for a moment, he wasn't standing on the bridge of the Erebus. He was floating in a void of swirling lights and shadows. In front of him stood something vast, unseen, unknowable. You are being watched. Rourke gasped, and suddenly he was back in his body, standing on the bridge. The Overlord was still there, wounded, desperate. But Rourke couldn't shake the feeling that something far greater had just noticed him. Commander, the Overlord is collapsing, Velen shouted. Rourke snapped back to reality just in time to see it. The Overlord was breaking apart, its form unraveling like mist in the wind. A final, ear-piercing scream rang through the void as it ceased to exist. For the first time in history, a Voidborn Overlord had fallen. Silence fell across the battlefield, and then, across the human fleet, a single cheer broke through the comms. Then another, then another. Humanity had done the impossible, but Rourke didn't join the celebration. His hand was still clenched around the Oblivion core shard, his mind racing. Something else had spoken to him, something watching from the darkness beyond even the Voidborn. And for the first time, Rourke felt true fear. The true enemy revealed. Admiral Kieran stood on the bridge of the UN's Vanguard, staring at the massive holographic display before him. The battle against the Voidborn had raged for months, but something felt off. The Voidborn were powerful, but they had fought like soldiers following orders, not like conquerors. Now, as the enemy fleets pulled back in perfect synchronization, Kieran's instincts screamed that something far worse was coming. "Admiral," said Lieutenant Vale, his voice uneasy, "we intercepted a strange transmission from the Voidborn. It's not like anything we've seen before." "Play it," Kieran ordered. The bridge filled with a deep, unnatural voice that sent chills down everyone's spine. "You were never the enemy. You were the test. The architects have seen your defiance. The cycle ends now." Silence fell over the room. "Architects," Kieran repeated. "Who are they?" A soft beep alerted them to a new sensor reading. Dr. Ilara Morgan, chief scientist aboard the Vanguard, analyzed the data and paled. "Admiral, something massive is approaching from deep space, and it's not Voidborn." Kieran clenched his jaw, put it on screen. The main display flickered to show an enormous rift tearing open in space. From it emerged structures that defied physics, colossal, shifting constructs of dark energy, pulsing with an eerie glow. They weren't ships, they weren't even alive, but the sheer presence of them made every officer on the bridge feel small, insignificant. Dr. Morgan whispered, "I think we've just met the architects of the abyss." Humanity had thought the Voidborn were their greatest threat, but now it was clear. The Voidborn were only messengers. The true enemy was far beyond anything they had imagined. A cold mechanical voice filled the ship's systems without warning. "Your kind has disrupted the cycle. This galaxy will be erased. Prepare for reformation." Kieran gripped the command console. Hell no. Humanity doesn't just roll over and die. Dr. Morgan worked frantically on her console. "Admiral, I've analyzed their energy signature. They're not just attacking us. They are rewriting reality itself. If they finish their process, the Milky Way won't just be destroyed. It will never have existed." Vale cursed under his breath. "How do we fight something like that?" Morgan turned to Kieran, determination in her eyes. "We evolve. The architects think we are just another species bound by their rules. But what if we change? What if we become something they cannot erase? The idea was insane, but so was fighting godlike beings who could delete a galaxy like wiping a hard drive. Kieran's mind raced. If humanity wanted to survive, they couldn't just defend themselves. They had to ascend beyond what they were. He turned to the crew, his voice steady. "We've fought impossible wars before. We've stood against the Voidborn and survived. Now we take the next step. We will show the architects that humanity is not a mistake to be erased. We are the future." The crew of the Vanguard knew they were facing certain doom, but they also knew one thing. If anyone could defy the gods of the abyss, it was humanity, and they would fight until the very end. The becoming of gods. Rourke floated in the void, his body no longer human. The transformation was complete. He could feel it, dark matter flowing through him, pulsing like a second heartbeat. His mind stretched beyond time, beyond space. He was no longer bound by the rules of the universe. Neither were his void walkers. Each of them had become something new, something beyond life and death. Their bodies had dissolved into the fabric of existence itself, merging with the hidden forces of the cosmos. They were no longer flesh, no longer bound by the architect's design. They were singularity beings. Rourke turned his gaze toward the infinite expanse before him. The architect's vast empire stretched across galaxies, built on laws they had written, physics they had sculpted to fit their rule. But those laws no longer applied to him. The final battle was about to begin. The architects watched in silence. For the first time in eons, they did not understand what was happening. Their creations had always obeyed them. Even rebellions had been within expected parameters, pre-written into the fabric of existence. But this was different. Rourke and his Voidwalkers were outside the system. Their existence defied logic. They moved without moving. They spoke without words. They existed in places where time itself did not flow. "They are beyond our reach," one of the architects whispered. "Impossible," another growled. "Nothing is beyond us. We are the makers. We wrote reality." Yet, no matter how much they tried to manipulate the flow of time, no matter how many universes they collapsed and rewrote, Rourke and his Voidwalkers remained untouched. The architects had lost control. Rourke did not need weapons. He held the Oblivion core in his hands. Though hands was no longer the right word, he existed as a force, a being of pure will. The core pulsed with the power to erase existence itself, but he would not destroy. No, destruction was the architect's way. He would rewrite. Reaching into the fabric of the cosmos, Rourke touched the source code of reality, the rules that bound humanity, the chains that made them weak, the algorithms that ensured they could be wiped out at the architect's whim. He shattered them. And then he wrote new ones. Humanity would never again be erased. They would never again be hunted like insects, never again be subject to the will of unseen gods. Their existence would be permanent, woven into the foundation of the cosmos itself. He rewrote the laws of physics, making it so that humans would always endure. A ripple spread across the universe. The very nature of reality shifted. Stars flickered. Planets trembled. The architects screamed. They had never felt this before. Loss. For the first time, something had happened outside their control. They had shaped the universe to fit their will for eons, and now something had rewritten their design. Their voices echoed through the void, a chorus of rage and desperation. They tried to fight back, to undo Rourke's work, but they could not reach it. It was locked away in a space beyond their grasp. "This cannot be," one architect roared. "They were mortals. They cannot challenge us. Fix it, rewrite it, erase them." But they could not. The moment had passed. The code was written. Humanity had ascended beyond them. The architects had lost. And for the first time, the gods of the universe knew what it meant to be powerless. Rourke looked down at the universe he had saved. The war was over, not with destruction, but with creation, not with bloodshed, but with defiance. The architects still existed, but their control was broken. They could no longer undo what had been done. And humanity was free. Rourke let out a breath, not air, not sound, but something deeper, a final goodbye to the man he had once been. He and his Voidwalkers were no longer part of the mortal realm. They had become something else. Not gods, not rulers, something more. The cosmos stretched before them, endless and unwritten. And for the first time in history, it did not belong to the architects. It belonged to humanity. The last war of the architects. The architects refused to accept defeat. Even as the battle across infinite worlds raged on, they prepared for their final move. They were not like humans. They did not fear death. They had built the very laws of reality itself, and now they sought to rewrite them. Rourke and his neo-humans had destroyed many of their strongholds, torn through their defenses, and even shattered their timelines. But the architects had one last trick, a move so dangerous that even they hesitated to use it. They would collapse dimensions, not just one, but all realities where humanity existed. If they could not win, they would erase everything. The first signs were subtle. Stars flickered like dying candles. Entire planets warped and crumbled without a trace. Time itself twisted, and echoes of past and future mixed together. Battles that had already been fought repeated endlessly, while some warriors vanished as if they had never existed. On the bridge of the Infinity Blade, Rourke watched the chaos unfolding in horror. His crew stood frozen, witnessing the impossible. "They're collapsing the multiverse," whispered Sarah, her eyes wide with fear. "They're erasing us." Rourke clenched his fists. "Not if we erase them first." The neo-humans were no longer bound by time. Their very existence had been altered by the paradox energy they wielded. Rourke could feel it within him, the ability to see beyond cause and effect, to exist in all moments at once. The architects thought they controlled the universe, but for the first time, humanity had stepped beyond the chains of fate, and they would fight from beyond time itself. The architects stood in the void, the space between all realities. They were shifting, no longer bound by their physical forms, transforming into pure logic and law. They reached into the heart of existence, rewriting the fabric of reality. The universe trembled as they pulled at its threads. And then Rourke arrived. Not just Rourke, but all versions of him, past, present, and future. The neo-humans stood beside him, an army from across time and space. Every victory, every battle they had fought, had led to this moment. "You will not win," the architects' voices echoed. "You are nothing but an anomaly, a mistake that must be erased." Rourke smirked. "That's the thing about mistakes. Sometimes they rewrite the whole story." The war began, not with weapons, but with the clash of paradoxes. The architects tore holes through time, trying to erase Rourke's very birth. But for each version they erased, another stepped forward. The neo-humans broke the laws of cause and effect, reshaping reality as they saw fit. A battle of pure existence erupted. The architects summoned storms of antimatter, collapsing space itself. The neo-humans countered with dark matter, bending reality into impossible shapes. Time shattered. A million versions of the same battle played out across infinite realities. Rourke fought side by side with himself, his echoes striking down the architects' forms one by one. They burned away like dying stars, screaming as their own creations turned against them. The void itself began to unravel. The architects had never faced anything like this. They had always been the masters, the creators, the rulers of reality. But they had underestimated humanity. They had underestimated Rourke. And then, silence. The universe stopped trembling. The stars flickered back into place. Time, once fractured, began to heal. The architects were gone. Rourke stood alone in the void, breathing heavily. His army had vanished, not because they had died, but because they had won. He was the last paradox left, and as he looked into the endless abyss of creation, he knew one truth. Humanity was free. The birth of a new era. The war was over. The architects, the beings that had controlled time, fate, and existence, were gone. Their great structures collapsed into nothingness, their influence erased from every timeline. The paradox war had changed everything. Humanity had won, but at what cost? On the bridge of the eclipse, Rourke stood in silence, gazing at the void outside. The stars were different now. The universe itself felt empty, as if a great weight had been lifted. But it was not peace he felt. It was something else, something unknown. "Commander, the last architect's signatures have vanished," reported Dr. Celine Carter. "We are free." Free. The word felt strange. For so long, they had fought against gods, rewriting reality itself just to survive. Now those gods were gone, and the burden of existence rested solely on humanity's shoulders. General Vance let out a long breath. "We did it, Rourke. We changed the future." Rourke nodded, but his face remained unreadable. He could feel the changes in his body, in his mind. He was no longer the same man who had first set foot on this journey. The neo-humans, his people, stood behind him. They had evolved beyond human limits, shaped by the paradox energies of the war. Their minds were faster, their bodies stronger, their thoughts stretching beyond the present. They were something new. And that meant they could never go back. The victory celebrations on Earth were grand. Cities shone with lights, people cheered, and the survivors honored those who had fallen. Humanity had won its right to exist without chains. But Rourke and the neo-humans were not there. "They fear us," whispered Captain Mira as she stood beside Rourke aboard the Eclipse. "They see us as something unnatural." Rourke did not answer. He already knew the truth. The neo-humans had become something beyond human understanding. Their thoughts moved too fast. Their presence unsettled even their own people. Dr. Carter approached. "The Council has made a decision. They don't want us to return." A long silence followed. No anger, no sadness, just acceptance. "Then we leave," Rourke said. "We find our own path." The Eclipse and its fleet turned away from Earth, engines burning with a strange new energy. The last of the neo-humans stood together, watching their home disappear behind them. As the ships moved into deep space, something stirred. A voice, no, a whisper, echoed through the vastness. "You have won." But the stars whisper of something greater, waiting beyond the void. Rourke closed his eyes. He could feel it now. A presence, something ancient, something watching. The architects had been gods, but they were not the first. And they would not be the last. He turned to his people. "Our war is over, but our journey is just beginning." Far beyond the edges of the known universe, the neo-humans disappeared into the unknown. And deep in the void, something watched.